let's get to the story that I just blew my mind when I saw this morning. Not April the 1st yet, and yet still on the front page of a couple of the papers now. Even God could be going gender neutral. Church of England bishops, not just some random vicar who's lost their mind, but Church of England bishops are to debate this spring whether or not to stop referring to the Almighty as he. Now, of course, you get the feminists saying, well, you know, God is a she, but a major project on gendered language may decide that priests should stop using the male pronouns he and him in some prayers, even drop the phrase Our Father from the Lord's Prayer. Presumably, you can't even call it the Lord's Prayer anymore. This is a radical rewriting that would have to be approved by the governing body of the General Synod. But, of course, many will be resisting this. This is something that was revealed in a question to the Liturgical Commission, a panel that develops the wording used for church services. Well, let's talk to a guest on this, Tim Dieppe. He is from Christian Concern, a prominent evangelical organisation here in the UK. Good morning to you, Tim.
Morning, Julia.
I have a funny feeling that even though you and I are probably on opposite sides of this debate, we're going to agree. I am a sort of staunch fundamentalist atheist. You're an evangelical Christian, but I'm betting we're both going to agree this is utterly bonkers.
I do agree with you, Julia. And I think when I first heard this, I didn't actually believe it. I thought, really? Have they really done that? They've really gone so far from orthodoxy and so far from traditional faith. And I think what this shows really is just how far they are prepared to go. I mean, we worship God as a Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That's how he's revealed himself. And Jesus came to earth as a man and rose again as a man. And then to say that, oh, well, we don't really worship Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. We worship like Mother, Sister, and Holy Spirit. Well, I'm sorry, that's now a different God. That's something else. You're now creating a different religion. You're making God how you want him to be, not how God has revealed himself. And I think this shows just how far from even pretending to be Orthodox when you're messing with the Trinity and messing with how we address God and how Christians have always traditionally addressed God as Father.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I can remember certainly in my teenage years this whole, God is a woman, and I know if there is a God, there's no reason to think the male or female God, an almighty power would transcend male and female. These are, earthly concepts rather than, heavenly concepts, and that doesn't not make sense to me. If there is a God, but it does just seem bizarre yet again. And this apparently originally was put forward by Joanna Stobart, a vicar in the Diocese of Guildford, Surrey. Said some clergy want to refer to God without saying he or him, particularly in prayers for forgiveness for sins. This is a bit I don't understand. It's sort of, if this is what you do think, and we see this again and again. We got vicars who say, well, I'm not entirely sure I believe in an afterlife or things like that. Maybe the church isn't for you. It does seem to me there are an awful lot of people who want to be part of the Christian church, particularly the C of E church, but don't actually seem to agree with any of its teachings, in which case go off and set up a new religion would be my suggestion.
Well, I do agree with you. When you have very clear church doctrines and the 39 articles and all that, and they're very, very precise and very clear and designed to try and protect the faith and say, this is actually what we believe. And if you don't believe that, you ought to be disciplined or you ought to leave, or in good conscience, you ought to resign. And I think when you have bishops who are very clearly and obviously departing from the faith and very clearly and obviously teaching stuff that is direct contradiction to what the creeds and what the teachings of the church say, you've got to ask, why are they not being disciplined, or why is somebody not saying, hang on a minute, this isn't actually Christianity? And I think that the problem is that the church has become so captured by sort of woke ideology and transgender ideology that they don't even realise where they've got to. They've already done a few years ago blessings for transgender acquired identity, which is an absurd thing to do. At the moment, they're proposing blessings for same-sex relationships, which is a massive change of doctrine. And then, they use language like gender assigned at birth. And when one of the bishops was quizzed this week, why do you use that language? Well, actually, gender is determined at conception and is recognised at birth. You have to watch the video because the bishop paused and thought a minute and then said, I don't know. They've just got no idea.
Well, you shouldn't be in any job, let alone that job. But this is the thing. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in the teachings of the Church of England, but it seems to me they're pretty clear. I'm massively in favour of same-sex marriage, but I also completely defend the right of the Church. If the teachings of the Church say, and for some people they say that's not the case, and some people they say is the case, that is unacceptable in their moral religious code, that they should not have to perform those ceremonies. I believe if we're going to have freedom of worship in this country, which is something I believe very strongly we should have, as someone who's a liberal, then we need to defend the right to worship as we see fit. But we only ever see this, don't we, with Christianity? We don't see that, and particularly CV. We don't see the Catholic Church doesn't get itself into such a big mess over this. I mean, they've been standing firm on a lot of issues, again, on which I profoundly disagree with them, on homosexuality, on women, priests and things like that. I completely disagree with them, but I defend their right to do so. And Islam, I mean, there seems to be very little questioning of some of the beliefs, the tenets of Islam, and criticism of those beliefs and saying they need to change. But the Church of England, it seems to me, is something that is expected to just go with not just long-term, decadal or even century-long changes in our attitudes and beliefs as a population, but frankly, the latest whim on the front page of the Guardian newspaper.
Well, I agree, and I think that the Church of England as such has basically capitulated to culture. Christianity traditionally has always been countercultural in the way it's viewed, particularly sexual morality. But sexual morality has been countercultural, was countercultural 2,000 years ago. It's still countercultural today, more countercultural today than perhaps it was 50 years ago, but still it's very countercultural today. That's not a reason to change it. That really is not a reason to change it. That's the way it is. That's the way God's revealed it, that it should be. And the church shouldn't be just changing, say, oh, people don't like this. Oh, dear, we better change. No. We ought to be prepared to die and be martyred and say, no, this is the truth. This is the right way. And actually, if we uphold holiness and righteousness and an absolute morality and truth, people are attracted to that. People want some sense of what's really true, what's really right. And this is the best way to live. And I think there's vitality in those churches that actually are upholding a traditional...
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? The evangelical churches are doing very well, whereas these very traditional churches... are pretty much their congregations are dying out. I mean, we've had hundreds, well over 1,000 texts and tweets in about this, and I've yet to find one where people are going, yeah, this seems like a good idea, whether people are religious or not. My favourite one I've just spotted, from someone who's calling themselves whatever you want, who will replace Morgan Freeman as God in every film now? Sam Smith? Yeah, I think that's the territory we're in. Tim Dieppe from Christian Concern, thank you very much for joining us.